You've probably heard what's happening in the news recently regarding sexual assault, especially in the entertainment industry. And to be clear, it's not just Hollywood, it's everywhere. Like, this stuff happens in bakeries, too. It's just not getting written up in the New York Times. This recent calling out of sexual assault has been a long time coming. It's good. It's like cutting out tumors. It's messy and it's complicated and it is gonna hurt, but it's necessary and we'll all be healthier for it. And it sucks, and some of our heroes will be taken down, and we will discover bad things about people we like, or in some cases, people we love. Let's just say it, I'm talking about Louis.
The Louis to which Sarah Silverman refers is the comedian Louis C.K, who was at the height of his fame and popularity in 2017, before he became one of the many men accused of sexual impropriety at that time.
There is no greater threat to women than men. We're the #1 threat.
Popular comedian Louis C.K. at the center of the latest sexual misconduct allegations, now confirming them in a statement saying, "I want to address the stories told to the New York Times by 5 women. These stories are true."
I'm the guy that women see and they go, "What?"
The bombshell report by the Times detailed stories from the women stretching back more than a decade, all saying Louis exposed and touched himself in front of them. Chicago comedy duo Dana Min Goodman and Julia Wallov tell the Times they met the comedian at a festival in 2002. At first, they thought he was joking, but then he proceeded to take all of his clothes off and get completely naked. The comedian admitting, "At the time, I said to myself that what I did was okay, but what I learned later in life, too late, is that the power I had over these women is that they admired me, and I wielded that power irresponsibly."
Don't you think that the Louis C.K. thing was extra disturbing because he was doing it to one of us?
Yes.
He wasn't just doing it. He wasn't just saying, "Hey, girl, stay still while I jerk off in front of you," which is gross. But he's also doing it to what should be a peer.
Exactly, and that's what indicates to me it's a power dynamic, and you could have had a sex worker. You could have jerked off. A sex worker would have been thrilled.
I've not made this video to defend Louis C.K. He has largely admitted to the actions and seems to be dealing with the repercussions.
Mm-hmm. I don't miss that shit at all. The mountaintop. A mountaintop is a place you visit. You don't fucking live
there.
You don't live in a tent sucking oxygen. It's actually not fun up there. It's a goal, but it's not a life.
At the time of his public shaming, Louis had completed making his 3rd feature film as director, his first since 2001's Pootie Tang. And having sold the distribution rights to The Orchard for $5 million, it was set to have a wide release that December. But 2 weeks ahead of its premiere, one of the stars, Chloë Grace Moretz, announced that she would not be doing publicity for the film.
Given the Me Too movement and also just kind of what this film stands for as well, you had a somewhat personal experience with it. You worked with Louis C.K. How did you deal with that and how are you doing now?
I think it's not helpful to kind of, if I could single in and talk about my experience, but I think it's more important to talk about the entire movement as a whole. I'm one of hundreds of thousands of women in so many different industries that has a story. And, you could ask any of us in this room and all of us could easily give you 10 stories, I'm sure.
It is not clear if Chloë Grace Moretz had problems of a sexual nature with Louis C.K. firsthand, or just backed out of the promotions in solidarity with those who did, choosing to talk about the Me Too movement as a whole over her own experience.
Chloë Grace Moretz says the film she starred in alongside Louis C.K., I Love You Daddy, should never be released. She told the New York Times, "I don't think it should be released. I think it should just kind of go away, honestly." Back in November, the New York premiere of I Love You Daddy was canceled just hours before the event was set to begin. Later that day, the New York Times published a story that included testimonials from 5 women that accused C.K. of sexual misconduct.
The release of the movie was abandoned in its entirety, despite previews being positive.
I liked the movie, though, and not just as a comedy about a man and a daughter he can't control. It also gives you all kinds of insights into Louis' self-hatred, fear of women, and creepy conceptions of sex. There's enough in it for a whole psychiatric conference.
Screener copies had already been released for your consideration when the next big award ceremony came around. After the film's cancellation, these discs went for quite a price where they could be found.
Like, I lost so much fucking money in a day. In one day,
I lost, I'm not going to tell you how much, but it was millions and millions of dollars. Millions and millions. So you know it's at least 4. Because 3 is millions and million. So it was millions and it was 35 million. I don't give a fuck. Fuck it. I'll tell you I lost $35 million. You don't tell people you have $35 million, but you can tell them you lost $35 million because that shit is hilarious. That's fucking funny.
The movie was shot in secret, but when it was announced out of the blue, I was really looking forward to seeing it. Shot on location in New York City on 35mm film in gorgeous black and white, featuring a cast of actors I held in high regard and written and directed by the biggest comedian of the time. Then, poof, it disappeared.
You know, I always thought the audience would decide whether you're an objectionable comic or even a good comic, you know? And so Louis went up here at the Comedy Cellar, and the audience let him know. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. But if the audience don't like him, then the club won't book him. I mean, that's how things work. And, you know, just because your heart can break for more than one person at the same time, you know, and a person can do a bad thing and you can feel sorry for that person while feeling worse for the person that had the bad thing done to them.
Whatever your opinion is regarding Louis C.K.'s sexual impropriety, it is almost certainly valid. I understand the arguments on both sides. He asked for permission, but they felt obligated to say yes because of his status. But they said yes. But he should know that he's got more power than them. No one should employ him again. No one has. His films are self-financed. He's not been punished. He hasn't committed a crime. He can't get work. He's lost millions. He's paid enough. Honestly, I don't know what the answer is. Personally, I've always believed in the death of the author, which is to say the separation of art and artist. So I got a copy of the movie. I want this video to stay up, so I'm not going to use any of the footage here. But we open on a meal between successful television writer Glen Topher and his ex-wife Aura. Their aimless 17-year-old daughter China, who is currently away on spring break from college, wants to move back in with her father for her last year of higher education. Glen's former wife suspects this is because she has her father wrapped around her little finger. Glen arrives home with his best friend Ralph and finds out his 12-part TV series has been picked up for a season, even though it's not even been written and is due to be on screens in the fall. China has arrived home early from Florida and has been lounging in the sun in her bikini. Ralph jokes to Glen that she's been playing sex games all summer long. Glen asks China what she plans to do with herself after college. She doesn't know, but asks her father to schedule her a private jet so she can go to Florida, the exact location she's just come from. Glen reluctantly agrees, and she says, "I love you, Daddy." Glen's ex-girlfriend Maggie, who still visits, accuses Glen of being a pushover. Glen's production partner Paula urges him to get writing on the new script. Superstar actor Grace Cullen shows up and tells Glen that she loves his writing and wants to work with him. Glen falls a little bit in love despite the fact that she's 5 months pregnant. Glen watches a Grace Cullen movie on television that night and has an argument with his daughter. He's inspired to phone the real Grace Cullen. He tells her about China not being happy with him, and she suggests bringing her to a party she's throwing to get back in her good books. At that party, Glen is starstruck by the sight of his favourite director, Leslie Goodwin, an older man with an eye for the younger ladies, and an apparent rumour of paedophilia in his past, though nothing was ever proved. Glen asks how Grace knows Leslie. Apparently they went out years ago when she was younger. Leslie flirts with China. Despite the fact that she's initially repulsed by him, he manages to turn on the charm. Glen starts seeing Grace romantically. Grace informs Glen that Leslie has invited China to Paris with him and some friends. Glen denies her permission to go, but she is resolute. Glen argues with Grace about the matter. Grace points out that China is of consenting age and can have sex with whomever she wishes. Glen states that at 17 she is a minor and Grace wouldn't understand as she's not a parent. Yet. They end up splitting up. Upon Leslie and China's return from France, Glen confronts them with his concerns about what he thinks is a sexual relationship. China is offended. To make up to his daughter again, Glen throws China a lavish 18th birthday party, at which China tries to seduce Leslie, but he is indifferent to her temptations. Months later, at an awards ceremony, Glen bumps into Leslie, who is now working in television to great success, while Glen's career has faltered. Leslie asks how China is. Glen says he hasn't seen her. Glen's ex, Maggie, takes him to a department store to see his daughter. She now has a job and a plan with what to do with her life. The end. This film is excellent. A grown-up comedy for grown-ups about messy, complicated characters. It's sharply written, witty, romantic, vulgar, and heartbreaking. Had it been released without the controversy, I'm pretty sure it would have been a hit and possibly won some of those awards, almost certainly the one for cinematography. But I doubt it will ever see the wide release intended for it, as it exists in the same grey area, albeit dark grey, that the real-life Louis C.K. situation does. No one is perfect, everyone is flawed. Things can be legal but unsavoury, and everyone has a right to make their own mistakes. The problem is because of the allegations... Oh no, wait, he confessed. Not allegations, because of the events which happened in real life. I can see why an audience would read this movie as being about Louis C.K. the man, and the unsavoury opinions contained therein being ascribed to him and not a character. Unfortunately, people struggle to separate the face on the screen with a real person. That's not unique to this film. Humphrey Bogart used to have tough guys picking on him all the time, and he wasn't a fighter. Most of the cast of the TV show Casualty have had someone come up to them in the street to talk about their ailments, thinking that they're real doctors. I totally understand them not releasing this film to avoid that backlash, though I think it's a real shame.
Look, it's no hardship to boycott the junky films of alleged harasser Brett Ratner, and the world will be better with Harvey Weinstein way out of sight. But we will be poorer without Louis C.K. Maybe one day he'll perform something that helps us fathom his sickness, and in understanding it, be better at stopping it or helping the victims.
I'm Scott Kingsnorth, and I'm making a movie.